18th to order. Everyone is present. Do I need to call roll call, or can I just say everyone is present? Everyone is present. Okay, I think everybody has the, oh, do we have the minutes in front of us from last meeting?
Eric.
That was it?
Yeah.
Okay. Every minutes look okay to everyone?
Yeah.
I move to accept minutes as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay. Chris, was the only thing that you had on the agenda for this evening, the variance of the
Conditional
conditional
use.
use?
I've got draft goals and objectives.
Oh, okay,
So,
awesome.
So what I would say with this is by next meeting, if there's anything about these we want to change, we should change and then send them to the planning commission to adopt.
Now, were we gonna go over this? I know I called you and said I didn't have a problem with any of them. Weren't we gonna go over this, Chris?
Well, I kind of dropped the ball on having us do an update committee meeting. So
Okay.
maybe what we can do, if you all want, is have just a separate update committee meeting soon.
Okay.
And just look at the goals and objectives.
Would you do it before the regular meeting?
Yeah,
Okay.
I would say,
It wouldn't be a separate night.
I would say like sooner rather than later, like not toward next month. but
A separate
maybe
meeting
with-
though, right?
Yeah.
He said separate meeting,
Yeah,
not
separate.
before.
Just have an
Separate.
update committee meeting
Yeah.
in the next couple of weeks maybe.
Okay.
If we can work out, if time-wise, everybody can work it out and we can get through it.
I'll do what
We did-
everybody else wants to do.
So, I mean, does that sound,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then we can go over these, make any changes, and then in February, we could be recommending approval, or recommending them to the, planning commission for approval, and the planning commission would recommend it to the city council.
Okay.
I think that's what we do. I'll double check.
And planning commission is planning or zoning and,
The next meeting, so
who is the planning commission?
Kevin, Margaretta Arnett.
Okay, that's
Ashley. It's the
zoning
meeting,
and-
yeah.
After us,
Yes.
okay, gotcha.
Yeah, that's who we kind of do work for.
Mhm.
Right, okay.
So, I'm probably not gonna be in the office tomorrow, but maybe Monday we can start kicking around sometime to have an update committee meeting.
Okay.
And I'll try to have a little bit more information besides just this, but I think the goal of that should be to have a group consensus on goals and objectives.
So that's what the next meeting will be on, I guess.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
If we could do the meeting sometime next week, that would work for me. I'm going out of town the 29th, and I'll be gone for a couple of weeks, so.
Okay.
Well, where are you going?
Costa Rica?
Huh?
Costa Rica?
Somewhere warm.
Costa Rica?
Yes.
Well, if you find people stowed away in your luggage, we can talk about it tonight.
Take lots.
I don't think I'm much further.
Anybody else have any conflicts next week?
The 30th is mine. I'll be gone all day in Lexington.
Okay, well, that's my birthday, so
So you're not
I
gonna
would
be
say
here?
no on the 30th as well.
Okay.
so.
Wednesday, no, for me, I've got a KFIA meeting.
Well, no, she was saying the 20, you're gonna be gone the 29th?
Yes,
So it would be-
that's not next week, it's the week after.
Right, so like
That's why I'm saying next week would work for me.
maybe Thursday or Friday next week?
Yeah, I work Thursday or Friday. Wednesday'd be the only day up for me.
Is that?
Wednesday.
Thursday, Friday works.
I think I've
Friday
got
works.
something Friday.
Okay,
Thursday works.
What time would it be?
whatever time works for everybody.
Just let me know. As long as it's not on the 30th, I'm good.
So,
I'll work with everybody
Week
else.
from today,
Yeah.
what time?
5 o'clock.
5?
What is the date?
25th.
The 25th.
Or thereabouts, I'll come right after work.
Can you do 5, Eric?
I can make it work.
What was that, the 25th?
Yes.
5?
25th will be Thursday,
Yeah.
right?
I'm driving school bus on the 26th, driving
To,
Esther
At
County.
5 PM.
okay. Okay, I'll send out an email then
Okay, good.
and make sure we're all on the same page and then go from there.
Okay. Okay.
So, all right. So the quick, I don't want to drag this out too long. The thumbnail of this is a couple weeks ago, can't remember exactly when it happened now. We got a report that somebody's moving storage buildings in over past BP down in that gravel area back there. So the mayor and I went down there, and there were a couple guys unloading them. There were like 15 or 16 at the time. So we asked them what was going on, and they said somebody's going to set up a business to sell them. They gave us the phone number, and that they were bringing 30. So
Somebody just.
so
We had it,
What did
yeah.
they do, rent the
We said
land?
the same thing.
yeah, they're leasing it from the owners live in Jackson.
The people that owned the trailer, that used to sell the trailers there? The mobile homes?
No.
I don't know who
this,
sold.
This is storage buildings, I think. This
Yeah,
is
but the
different.
property, they used to sell.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
I
The
don't-
people that own it, the property, live in Jackson. I don't know
Okay.
about other business owners
Okay.
or.
I didn't know.
They do not own BP. BP is its own little piece, but they do own the gym, the bargain barn, and then all that back there. It's all one. It's 5 or 6 acres. So I called her and she said, sorry, this just kind of happened. I've got the business license application. So she ended up coming and talking to me. But in the meantime, I look at the zoning ordinance and we don't have anything that addresses this kind of business. So I did a little bit of research. I went back through the ordinance and I came up with the interpretation that I made that basically said that type of commercial activity could be a conditional use in B3, and that is zone B3. And I didn't say that because that property was zone B3. It was, if it came down to it and they were gonna have to rezone, I was gonna tell her she'd have to rezone, but it worked out that way, so it would be a conditional use. Something I did come across that it never really clicked for me, which is really funny because I know I've copied and pasted it and I've read it a few times. In B2, it says all commercial activity has to be completely contained inside a building. So anything that's B2 in the city, which is almost all of the commercial, has to be completely inside a building. And the funny thing about that is I've done all that research when I first started about drive-throughs, because it didn't have anything that addressed drive-throughs. And that never clicked with me, but I think that would include a drive-through. It's basically, B2 is saying that it's all inside commercial activity.
B3?
B2.
B2,
Yeah,
okay.
which is Central Business District is the title of that
Okay.
zone district. So anyway, that was something that kind of made me rethink a few things, but also I'm like, I have to put this kind of at the forefront because that would actually be more directly affecting a lot of the businesses we have. There's quite a few that are in B2 that should not have been approved the way they were. So. But anyway, so B3 is the highway business district, and it's like it's the only business district that allows like car lots, maybe car washes. I can't remember, but it's more like that type of commercial activity. It feels more like car sales or something like that. But then the problem with the lot sales of storage buildings is they're technically buildings. And if you read the zoning ordinance, it says all buildings have to have a permit. A building or a permanent structure or whatever. And I'm like,
That's ridiculous.
right, and I'm like, we can't do a permit for each of these
Right.
buildings. That's just not feasible. It doesn't make any kind of sense. It would be onerous. It would be ridiculous to say, okay, we're gonna do one permit for all of them or one permit for each of them. That just doesn't. So I thought, well, then I think that to me sounds like conditional use permit. It's something that's a little bit out of the ordinary and doesn't exactly fit with all the other stuff. And I thought, well, we can address any issues with this type of use through a conditional use because we can discuss it and say, okay, well, what about this? Okay, then they need to do this. So So that's kind of how I came to that conclusion, we should do it as a conditional use. The only other thing I could see is a planned unit development, and nobody ever, like, we don't have any, and they're really weird in Kentucky, like the definitions and all that stuff, and I'm not even sure what they're supposed to be. They don't seem to be for commercial, they seem to be for residential, so it really there's nothing in the ordinance that addresses this type of use, which is a little bit in that, I think it's a use that's kind of developed more recently, but it's really not. I mean, like you were talking about mobile home sales, that would have been something all along, you know, going back decades, that people would have mobile home lots. So I don't know why it was never really addressed in the regulations. So anyway, that's how I got.
But when was the B3 put in place? Was that prior to when they were selling the mobile homes down there?
I don't know. I don't remember when there were mobile homes down.
Yeah, I remember.
But probably, I mean, if it's been in the last 20, 30 years, yeah, then obviously.
Oh, it's been in the last, I'd say,
I don't know when that was all zoned to B3, if it always had been since zoning was implemented, or if, I know some of the stuff on the other side of the road was zoned to B3, but I'm not sure about that area in particular. It may have just been originally zoned as B3,
okay.
which, you know, it would have been okay. So anyway, so I called her back and said, hey, you need to apply for a conditional use permit. She came in and applied. I talked to her a little bit more in detail about what she was gonna do. I talked to Arthur, the floodplain coordinator, about the floodplain aspect of it, because all of that down there is in a floodplain. He said unless it's a permanent structure, basically unless it has water and electric hookup and permanent foundation, it doesn't need a floodplain permit. Which is a little surprising to me, but I kind of get that too. It kind of goes back to what I was saying. It would be really weird to permit each one of them with a building permit. So, but just because of the nature of what it is. So, but he did say, so if they decide to use one of those as an office and get electric hookup and water put in it, then that would need a floodplain permit. So anything permanent, and then if they do any kind of grading, paving, anything like that, they will have to get a floodplain permit. Anything else that would trigger a floodplain permit, they would. So I put that as one of the conditions in the staff report. My biggest concern with it from a health, safety, and welfare standpoint is now you've got all these nice little homeless shelters
Yeah,
down there and out of the way.
Right.
So I said, one of the things I'm gonna recommend, I told her up front, I said, one of the conditions that I'm going to recommend as part of this is that when no one is there, they all have to be locked and secured
Absolutely.
against intrusion and the elements and critters, because they'll either, you know, it'll be kids getting in and messing around, or it'll be homeless people, or it'll be drugs, or it'll just be a magnet for
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Over
it's
time.
back, it's back where
It's a,
nobody,
yeah, it's a
back
big,
to back where
it's a
nobody
big road
moves
down
in.
by the creek, yeah. And she had mentioned, I think something about lighting, but I think that's a condition, I think that would be a very prudent condition to apply on this. is that
Right.
it-
Lighting,
it-
yeah.
if they have to be locked and secured, and she mentioned something about putting a gate, but not like a fence around the whole thing, so I'm like, well, a gate would prevent somebody from driving back there,
But not,
but that doesn't address the homeless, the,
Right.
right.
you know, people getting in trouble, you know, that kind of thing, so.
Does this, is there a name of this business?
Her
It's called
business,
Ivory Moon Trading.
that's her, she did submit a business license application. I told her to wait until we either approved or denied this. I just didn't want to get the cart before the horse. Didn't
Well,
want
she
to
put
get-
the cart before the horse.
Right, but I didn't want her to pay for a business license and then for some reason we decide, hey,
And approve it.
Right.
so.
Now, she's leasing the property?
She's leasing the property from the owners in Jackson. She owns the storage building lot in Slade. I think I mentioned that. Did I mention that, the whole group? I know I was talking about that before. One in Slade, one in Campton, which I think is her main office. That's the address she put and where the phone number is for. And
Now Sterling, wasn't it?
I can't remember exactly. The buildings came from Montgomery County, but I think somebody else closed and she bought their inventory. I think is how that worked out. It wasn't her lot that she moved from there to here. I swear I think she said West Liberty or Moorhead,
Moorhead,
Montgomery County, yeah.
I'm sure it's Moorhead.
Yeah.
Or, I think so.
So she's got at least 3 other locations, and she said she's done $2.2 million worth of business between them. So, I mean, seems like she's doing pretty good business, and she's really excited about this one, but, yeah, there were just, I had some concerns with this condition.
Now, would you insist on her having lighting, or would that be an option?
Well, the light, I don't think I put lighting necessarily. I put that they needed to be secure.
Yeah, right.
They had to be what?
Secured against
Secure, oh, yeah,
intrusion.
yes, I read that, yeah.
That would cover that, wouldn't it? Lighting,
Well,
or should it be a
We
separate item?
we could specify that.
Okay.
But, you know, then it comes down to, I mean, we don't really have standards for that, so like how much lighting, what would be adequate, what would be.
Right,
So I
and
mean, we
then-
could get into a whole, we could get really deep in the weeds with the lighting.
Right, it's
Right.
like
If we
most-
want to start doing some kind of lighting restrictions in town, I think we need to think about that before we start putting these conditions.
I'm trying to remember if
You know,
there's,
light that's down, not
Downcast.
light for.
Don't they have some kind of a thing with the power company for
Yeah,
certain
Clark will
places
put
where-
up security lights on their
Yeah,
pole.
that's what I'm
you still have to
talking
pay
about.
for it.
Right,
Yeah,
right, they're like $30 a month.
I know on the other side, on your side,
yeah, mine's small.
and maybe up, like, on the north side of the parkway, I know there are big lights.
Yeah.
Oh, that thing's lit up from the exit.
I
Yeah,
can't
it is.
remember on the south side where this is, if there are. I assume there are, but I can't remember.
She's pretty well lit up, that
Yeah.
area,
I
just
would-
from the exit. Like.
Yeah, so I mean, that really might, I probably need to swing by there on the way home and see. I can't remember, I didn't think to look.
Well, how big is this place?
Yeah, how many acres is she?
It's-
And how many units are they
It's,
gonna?
well,
There's quite a few units there.
Looks like a big old
I
chunk.
think I'd sent
Yeah.
this.
Yeah,
you
parcel-
did.
The parcel is this orange, and then it's roughly this circle area that's gravel. She did say her intent is, excuse me, when the weather gets better, she's gonna have somebody go in and bush hog and clean up the whole lot.
Yeah.
Not just the part that she's using, because she wants it to look better. And I imagine that means she would also be able to use a little bit more of it than what she currently can. So I don't know from, that was something I didn't know if we could regulate, like, I can't think of any way that we could regulate the total number that she had, or how we would even keep track of that.
Well, is there is it necessary to regulate the amount of buildings? I mean,
I would
Well, I
so.
think this, you also have to look at it as part of our comprehensive plan is we're trying to make the area, out of that area look nice.
Right.
Well, now,
And if you got 40 buildings in one area,
right, but that's a rough, I mean, there's nothing happening there. That's kind of a rough area. I'm just looking at it.
I mean, it's pretty rough right now.
Isn't there a section in here that they must be?
I think
6
her
feet apart?
putting, working down there would be an
Oh.
improvement.
Oh, yeah, that's, so,
6 feet apart?
so the other thing, I've forgotten about that, thank you.
Yeah.
I contacted one of the firefighters and said, hey, this is going on, is there anything from a fire standpoint that you would be concerned about? And he basically said, you know, the biggest concern would be if a fire started and they were really close together, it would spread really fast.
Right.
They're close together.
Yeah, and so he said probably a minimum of 6 feet. He said even at 6 feet apart, it still could spread, but it would slow that down a little bit. So I mean, we could look at saying they have to be a certain distance apart. That's a valid condition we could apply.
And that would curtail how many buildings she could put in it.
That
But
would-
you're gonna need space between them, because you gotta get in there with a rollback.
Right.
Get them out.
Right. She's gonna have to leave space just to be able to get the truck in.
I think Ballard's owns that land. They were from Berea.
No, they've owned it for a long time.
Okay.
Jackson. I'm
The
trying to
people out
think.
of Jackson.
It's not Barnett. Something like Barnett. I can't remember. It'll come to me.
So generally, I mean, Eric's got a good point. We're trying to clean that area up, but it's kind of an eyesore now. I don't know if that would be a improvement or a.
I mean, I've seen these where, you know, if they're placed right and everything, they don't look too bad. But then I've seen where, you know, if they're kind of junky and the buildings themselves aren't in good shape, and because a lot of times they'll sell used ones, they'll just throw them in there. And she seemed very concerned with how it appeared, like the appearance. I've seen the one at Slade, I haven't seen any of the others, so I don't know what her others.
The one in
She's-
Slade's nice.
Right, she kept saying, you know, come see the one I've got in Camden, and I just haven't been able to get to Camden. But she kept saying, you know, like, I want landscaping, I want it to look nice, I want, you know, like, it's a business, I want people to come in, you know, just try to sell this product. So, I mean, you know, somebody's intentions versus what they actually have to do from a regulatory standpoint are two different things altogether. But I feel like she will try to make it look nice. There's no
Well,
guarantee.
Don't we have some kind of rules and regulations about keeping property maintained?
Yes.
We do, but they
mowed,
aren't
weeded?
enforced.
Well, but that goes back to code enforcement. And we do,
Exactly.
there is a duty of maintenance on properties.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
in the zoning
Yeah.
ordinance.
I mean, I
and
just
nuisance
think that
ordinance.
would be sufficient.
So, yeah, I mean, if they were dilapidated, we can address that.
Right.
I think maybe that could be another condition we could make, is that
New and used buildings in good condition.
even if they are, not permanent structures, that they would still have to adhere to the nuisance
Yeah,
ordinance.
Absolutely.
So this isn't a zoning change, is it?
No.
This is merely requesting the ability to start this business there on that
Well,
property.
she's already started.
The conditional
Well,
use.
Yeah, it's,
Now,
this is.
She's already moved in.
I don't-
It's
I
conditional
don't-
Oh, well,
use.
yeah, right.
It's conditional use, so that's what we're
I
actually
don't
starting.
think she has-
Isn't that new as conditional
It's-
use?
yeah, that's what we're
That-
doing.
that's the-
We're basically giving her a permit with conditions
Right.
to
Right.
allow this use.
I think one of the conditions is they have to be about 6 to 7 feet apart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like I
They
said,
have to be locked.
the fire department said 6 feet. Does that sound good to everybody, or?
Yeah.
It's better
I mean,
than having them just flat up
We
against
can
each
impose
other.
any reasonable conditions. Well, you all.
I agree with the fire department. We can state it that the fire department requested a 6-foot separation between all the buildings. And there's going to be, definitely be a row between them, you know, to get them out when they
Yeah.
sell them.
Mhm.
And those places tend to have a pretty large turnover. At least the one on the corner does.
I'm gonna say 6-foot separation between all structures, temporary or permanent.
All lined up structures, because I've noticed some of them that they'll have like a road down in between them that still gives enough room to be able to go in, pick them up and bring them back out again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, which that'll limit her somewhat, just
Right.
the logistics of being able to get in and out.
Right.
To move them, so that will prohibit it just being a full,
Right.
just as many as they can cram in there, so.
I noticed that Judy Creek runs through
Mhm.
there, so is there any concern about impacting Judy Creek there?
That would kind of fall back, I think, on the floodplain.
Floodplain
coordinator.
guy, okay.
I don't know that that there's any, there's any way that they're gonna contaminate the water or anything like that.
Yeah,
can't-
I was just
I can't
thinking more
think of
about
it.
Yeah,
construction
generally
or.
these things are just nothing but a building themselves. There's-
Yeah.
I would be more
there's nothing
concerned if they were
inside.
putting a building to store material in,
Yes.
what the material was gonna be up
Mhm.
close to the creek.
Right. But I think because especially in the back space,
Mhm.
back over in here, there's gonna be some really dark sections.
Yeah.
And I would like to see lighting required in spaces that do not have dark, because you don't want buildings, say, right here along this line someplace and then have it all dark back there.
That would put undue stress on her, I think, to require lighting in that
So too.
sense. I think if we saw what the lighting was off the parkway, and depending how many power poles were there, she could
Yeah.
put lighting up
It
with
needs-
Clark, but to,
It needs to be checked out.
Yeah.
I don't wanna delay her, like, say, just on the lighting issue alone, and say,
Yeah.
well, you know, we're gonna put it off and come back and talk about it again. I think we can, I'm trying to think of how we can word it.
that she has to
That
do
she
it.
would have to address it, but not necessarily it would be making her spend tens or
Right.
hundreds of thousands of dollars on lighting.
Right.
As a condition when that's maybe unnecessary.
You give her like a time frame to get it done by?
Well, I think
Yeah, but then we'd have to decide how much lighting are we
Right.
gonna
I think you're,
need, is to tell her she's gotta have.
yeah.
I would just say in areas that are dark,
Um,
because that's
I
really.
think you'll
a
see it
good
pretty well
size.
lit from the parkway lights, the
I'm
outside.
But if
really,
those lights are clear over this way, this is going clear back over here.
if the lights on the
Almost
south
Right, I
side
agree,
are anything
yeah.
like the lights on the north side, it's gonna be well lit. But I can't remember what that's like.
I honestly think.
What's
that
your
should
thoughts,
be-
Kevin? Make force her to put lighting in?
No,
I don't think so either.
I think that would be too much,
I think it should, that
to
is.
force her to.
I think that should be the discretion of the business owner.
Altogether. Yeah.
I don't think there's anything in the nuisance ordinance that addresses if a place is too dark and it's causing problems.
Right.
But I wonder if it couldn't just be, if we could let it kind of fall to the nuisance ordinance, and maybe what happens is, if there's a problem with people inhabiting them,
Then you'd have to
or
put
there being
lighting
some
on.
kind of criminal activity or
Right.
something, we can look at it from the code enforcement standpoint, and maybe at that point, I could say, listen, here's a solution for you to solve this nuisance problem. And maybe we can look at it that way.
I would agree.
I know
with
that's
that.
not as concrete, but I think we still have the ability to address it if it's a problem. And if it's not a problem, then.
There's no problem.
Exactly.
And the truth
That's
is,
fine, I
for
would
the
agree with that.
security, lighting could help, but there could be other solutions, maybe she puts cameras up, maybe.
Oh, I guarantee you she'll put cameras up. Everyone puts
Right,
cameras.
so I mean, if she's got cameras, but it's dark,
I mean, everybody,
there would be a balance there. If it's dark, obviously that makes it more of an attractive nuisance. But then if she has cameras and has the ability to know who's doing it, and,
I'm sure she'll have some kind of security, I'm sure.
I don't want to make it too hard on our law enforcement either to have to constantly go down there and run people out. But, if she's got cameras, then that might be.
did she address the possible problem of people,
Her answer to that was she had not had that problem. But I told her, I said, I know for a fact that there are homeless people in that area, and I know for a fact that in that area, there have been break-ins and issues where the building next to McDonald's, that's the doctor's office, the therapy building, I think it was 2 winters ago, or last winter, it was either last winter or 2 winters ago, there was a couple that are homeless, and I know who they are. See them wandering around all the time. They had pulled the flashing away and were sleeping under there. And where they pulled the flashing away, it let all the heat under the building out, pipes froze and busted. There was nobody in there, so, it caused
Yeah,
some
major
damage
problem.
and
Yeah.
issues. And so, that kind of thing has happened in that area. Not just that's one instance, but, there's things that have been stolen, other places where there's a barn there that people have been living in at times. So I don't know that any of those people that were doing that then are still in the area, but it obviously could be an attraction to have these structures down there that
Right.
are unsecured, so.
well, the old flea market's empty, right? Isn't that-
Right.
That's empty.
Right.
No, there was a workout place in there.
No, that's the old,
Stanton.
that's the old grocery store. There's like a barn structure behind it.
Yeah.
Oh, the bar, okay, I'm with you.
And honestly, I don't know that there's been anybody staying in it, but it's more open and it's up
Right.
there closer to the parking lot
Right.
for the
Right.
gym too. These are down a little farther away and kind of hidden by that flea market structure.
Well, common sense would say she sounds like a smart woman. She's going to put her office where the road would go into where her
Right.
storage buildings are.
Well,
And there, right there, you'd have lights. I mean, she
I
put a
think-
light, I'm sure, and cameras there.
right. So the other nuisance aspect is, even if she chooses not to clear the lot, like she said, then we can go in and say, hey, your weeds and grass are too high, you gotta cut it. So I think clearing that lot, cutting the weeds down, cutting the scrubby trees, that'll help, because then it just opens up that visibility back there too.
Right.
So that'll help with the security, if she puts in a gate, if she's got cameras, things like that. I think it'll.
And that circled area is, what did she lease? The whole brown area or just?
Yeah, I think she has the whole property. What she told me, there's another gentleman who actually has a permit to remodel the bargain barn, but he got it in like March or April last year, and he worked a little bit on it, and he just stopped. And so she said she has an option to take it over if he bails out, and that she actually has an option to buy the whole property. And she's kind of hoping to do that. She's hoping to buy the whole property and ultimately get control of the bargain barn too, and she's gonna use it. Because she says she also does like build on-site buildings. And so like you can say, I want a shed on my property, and instead of buying one of the prefab, then they'll come out and build it on site.
I think it would be an asset to the city, the way that she's talking about this business. I don't think it would, in my opinion.
The only other question, which I brought up earlier, is insurance. Since that is a floodplain, will we have any responsibility for insurance for any of that? Or will they have to carry all the flood insurance?
It would be them. I think, I imagine it would, I don't know, honestly.
Yeah, I think we need to check that out to make sure that
But it
we
would
don't have any
definitely fall
responsibility.
on the owner.
Well, it should, but
From the
it's
city,
still
from
being
the
leased.
city's liability standpoint, that goes back to the floodplain coordinator.
Exactly.
And him, basically what he said was if the temporary structures don't require it, any permanent structures
Right.
would. See, and I had talked to him already about the bargain barn, because the guy was remodeling that, and I said, hey, does he need a floodplain permit? And he said, no, because it's an existing structure, and all he's doing is kind of like for like. He wasn't building anything new or anything like that, so he's aware of it, and they'll have to get a floodplain permit for anything permanent. Anything that's anchored down, anything that's hooked to utilities, that kind of thing, so.
I take it that she's not calling in tonight.
Well, I had emailed her and asked for a number, for us to call her, and she never replied.
Okay.
So I've got her number from the business license application. If you have questions, you want to talk to her, I can try to call her.
I think that the conditions that we've discussed are adequate,
I do.
frankly.
Which I have discussed, I think most of that with her, if not all of it. I told her she was gonna contact Justin, about a physical address. I talked to her about securing them against intrusion, licenses and permits. I talked to her about all that. I'm pretty sure I talked to her about the 6-foot separation.
Let's just make a list now and, we give it to her in writing or
Yeah,
that
so
she would
what
be
I'll
required
do,
to do.
what'll happen is, whatever conditions you all decide on, then I will put into the certificate of land use restriction, which then she would have recorded at the clerk's office. It would be attached to the property. But then she would also have that.
But you have on here, conditional use permit not applicable here on her application, is that,
I did that when she walked in. That's not. It is, yes. Good question.
Good thing you read it.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it yet.
I think when she first came in, I just thought, oh yeah, that'll be allowed. Then when I looked at it, I was like, no, maybe not.
Okay.
But only because of the permits for the buildings,
Just
right?
because of the nature of it. If she
Right.
were, if it would, I can't remember if car lots are conditional use, but basically if it were just a permitted use, or very similar to a permitted use, I could have just,
Now,
did
how
that business
will this affect the storage buildings that are already being sold in Stanton, up here on the corner of 213 in College? It's called
Competition.
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 No,
Oh, same,
I'm
same time.
I'm
It's
talking
called free
about-
enterprise.
Will it fall under this conditional use property also, not just competition?
Well,
No,
because
how
it's-
does it go?
It goes
It's already
back to
been
what I
there.
was saying before everybody got here. So in the interpretation that I made, I realized and had not realized prior that in the definition of B2, which is what that zone on the
Right.
corner,
right? So
it says that
Everything has to be enclosed and that's not.
all commercial activity has to be enclosed in the building. So that should
And
not
that's not-
have been allowed.
Exactly.
Right.
That should be conditional use also,
Well, no, they would have to rezone
have to rezone.
it. And
I
I
don't know
would
if I wanna
say,
rezone that area.
I would say we would not support a rezone there. So, and that actually isn't even a grandfathered, like legal non-conforming, it was there before the zoning, that came in and nobody ever caught
That was used car lot, wasn't it?
it. Yeah, it was. I
Well, it
remember-
was where tax wise is. I'm not sure what was on that corner.
I'll tell you what was on that corner. Dalton's Restaurant.
It,
What was it?
Dalton's Restaurant.
Yes, I
Then if you wanna
remember
go
that.
down where, the tax wise is,
That was a car lot, right?
Yeah.
Before that, it was a restaurant, before that, and
Okay.
you go down where the tax service is,
Mm-hmm.
was Western Auto and Hurst Furniture.
it was Hearst.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
was where
Hearst
Hearst was
Furniture,
that
right.
burned
Yeah.
down.
That's where they burned down, right?
Yeah,
So, yeah,
I mean,
Can I interrupt and
I
ask
don't know,
one question?
How do you address something like that?
well, we could,
I'd love to
it's,
see.
it's,
yeah,
that goes back to what I was saying in the beginning, or early on in our pre-meeting conversation about political will. It's what stand do you want to make on the zoning of mistakes that were made in the past?
exactly.
You want to shut down a business that's been operating for a few years.
Right.
It's kind of a pick your battle thing. Is it a battle we want to pick, or is it a battle we don't want to pick right now?
Well-
And if they come in, now, here's the thing. If they came in and said, hey, we want to build an office, we want to get a sign, I would have to say, I cannot,
Right.
I can't give you a sign.
You're lucky you got what you got for this long.
You can't expand that use. You
Right.
really shouldn't have it.
Right.
And at that point, maybe then we would address it.
Right,
Because honestly, now that I realize that, if we start addressing all the businesses that need
Exactly.
Oh,
to,
baby.
that have
exactly.
activity
I
out.
understand.
So like from a consistency standpoint,
Yeah, I don't think that's a can we
it
want
could
to
be
open at
this
this
like,
time.
yeah, so,
But certainly, I don't think that anything should be approved.
right. So
Going
we're
forward.
aware of it, and really what I need to do at this point is go through any of those businesses in that zone district that don't conform with the zoning and make a note.
Yeah.
And that way, anybody in the future that comes along will see that and then be able to make decisions based on that.
Say for instance, if that property ever comes up for sale, and I have no idea whether it ever will or not,
Right.
that it would have to meet a
Current
regular
zone, yeah.
zoning.
Right.
I will say in some other circumstances where I've realized that a property or business or something isn't conforming, and then I've had the opportunity to talk to somebody involved with it, it's one of those where it's a lot easier to gently say, hey, by the way, if you're gonna do something in the future, there's gonna be some problems. So you can wait till down the road, or we can talk about it now and kind of give them the option how to address it. Instead of, like I said, because I mean, if we open that can of worms, I don't want to pick and choose who we say you can't have your business.
Right,
You don't want to do
and
that.
I understand that.
And that's what would happen.
But I wanna
Right,
make
right,
sure
right.
though that we don't get caught in the middle of something, well, you did it to me, how
Right.
come you're not?
Well, that's
how
what
come-
would
how
happen.
come-
That's
how come
exactly
you're
what
letting
would
that
happen.
one get away with it?
Right.
Yeah,
So
Johnny
it-
says, I can't do it, but he can.
Exactly.
It might be
So-
better if
so
we
there
deal with
you
it on
are.
a case by case as they come
Right.
in to expand or change.
Right,
things.
exactly.
I think
Now, when's it
that's
go
a
from
good
B2
idea.
to B3? When's that zoning change in the city, do you know?
Well,
On the other
almost-
side of the
almost-
parkway?
Almost all of the B3 is south of the parkway. There's a
Okay.
little bit over by airport.
Okay.
There's a bit there near Billings Drugs, and there's some around, well, I don't even, yeah, there's something there at Airport Subdivision that's B3. Like Airport Market, in that area, there's something that's B3 there.
Do you have a good definition?
Yeah.
What would be a?
And it's weird, they messed.
I need a
there's
good
something
definition
real-
of conditional use.
Uh,
What is
page-
a good,
It's
what's
page
your-
21
as
of the
your-
zoning.
Huh?
Yes. Page
21.
21 of
Yes,
the
it
zoning
is.
ordinance.
It's,
in here.
okay, so you have
Right.
permitted uses. So
right,
basically, a permitted use is, it'll specify permitted uses, and if one of them was,
so we're putting conditions on this permit?
Right.
Okay, so in other words, by us, it's a conditional permit because we're gonna tell her the buildings have to be 6 foot apart. She might need lighting, right?
it,
So any zoning, like, if she came in and we felt there didn't have to be any conditions.
Right.
It would be
We could
non-conditional.
say it's conditional
Correct.
use, but we approve
Okay.
no
That's
conditions.
the
That,
way
I just wanted that very clear, and I would,
That's the way I
Okay.
understand it.
Permitted uses are kind of the first tier,
Mhm.
and in some places they're called a use by right. And basically, if it's a permitted use and you buy a vacant piece of property and it's zoned B1 or B2 or whatever, and the use that you propose is a permitted use, then all you would have to do is get like building permits for the structure and you could start that use.
right,
If it's falls up, the next tier is conditional use, and if it's a conditional use, then you can do it. You can't be told that you can't have the use, but then there's the opportunity for the Board of Adjustment to review it and impose conditions.
so we're turning this piece of property into conditional use.
Right.
Someone could have gone in there in B3, done their thing,
If it was a
No
permitted
problem.
use.
okay,
Except,
thank you, that's, I
Yeah.
needed that clarity.
and right, and this conditional use has to do with this property being part of the floodplain also, doesn't it?
That's a little bit of it. The other thing about conditional use is it would go with the business, and so if she picked up everything and moved out and somebody else came in and wanted to do that, they would have to apply for conditional.
It would apply to them too. That would set that property
Right.
standard for the future.
Right.
Okay.
Um,
I just wanted, there was a
Don't
little
hold
clarity.
me to this, because I don't have the ordinance in front of me, but I think if she sold the business to someone else and the business didn't change, I think the new owner would have to apply for their own conditional use. Now, that would be a little bit easier, because you can come in and go, well, here's what we told the previous owner, it all still applies, you know, or if you realize there's a problem, you say, we're gonna say, okay, maybe you need to add some parking, or, you know, whatever.
It says here, thereafter said use, if it continues to meet the other requirements of the regulations, will be treated as a permitted use.
Yes, yes.
So,
Yeah, once it's approved, then,
right.
yeah.
So let's put
do
the
we-
conditions down. What have we decided?
yes.
We're okay to
Okay.
let her do it, right?
So,
Yes.
And I am.
Okay,
I
so
don't know
I'll-
about anybody else.
I'll read what I have for the recommendations. I recommended that the applicant must work with the 911 coordinator to obtain a physical address for the business operation. It needs an address. It doesn't have one. All structures on the property associated with the commercial activities shall be secured against intrusion from people, animals, and the elements at all times with no employees are present. So I felt like if somebody was there and they're, you know, people are coming and going to see, it makes sense for them to be open. You don't want to have to lock and unlock it.
Right.
But, you know, at night, they need to be locked up
Okay.
when nobody's there. Applicants shall apply for a business license and permits for any construction activities, including any permanent structures, fences, signs, and any grading activity within the floodplain. That's kind of boilerplate, but I made sure to specify all that because of the floodplain.
Right.
Applicant will record a certificate of land use restriction upon approval. That's kind of the last step. That will just include all of these things. And then my note is that they'll adhere to the nuisance ordinance. I don't know if we need to make that a condition. That's just
What's that?
Make a note of it.
adhere to the nuisance ordinance. So like if there's a
Maintenance.
problem with somebody living in them, because we have
Oh,
ordinances that
okay.
address people living in temporary structures.
Right.
That, we don't have to make that a condition, that is enforced. But then we could say, must maintain 6-foot separation between structures, whether temporary or permanent.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I think that all sounds good.
And what about appropriate security?
Well, I think that was what I was saying, I think we can address that with the nuisance ordinance.
Yes.
If there's not enough light there, and then there
Okay,
are
good,
problems,
okay.
that we can address.
So we don't have to start putting in lighting, okay.
Yeah, I don't think we
Right.
should do that.
At that point, then I can be like,
Well,
hey, you have
it's
people
kind
living
of,
down
kind of
there.
hard to
Yeah.
make a decision when you don't actually see what's actually there.
Stan,
And-
please,
and-
you're
and all of
tired.
us, and all of us are
Yeah.
kind of guessing on what it actually looks like over there.
Where is that?
Oh, okay, yeah, we need to
Yeah,
move on.
I know.
So,
That's,
somebody could make a motion that we approve the conditions as read.
I propose that I make a motion that we approve this
I second it.
additional use as Chris just laid it out
Okay, is that,
in seconds.
any,
Yes.
any,
Okay. And that was really the only thing that we had on
Yes.
to discuss tonight.
Yeah.
So the only other thing that we all need to keep in mind is
Are
that
we gonna vote on that?
Oh, You made a motion, accepted it. Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Signify by saying.
Thank you.
Are there
I'm
any
good with
nays?
that. I'm good.
Yes.
All right, thank you. And the only other thing we have then is a meeting next Thursday at 5 o'clock to discuss the comprehensive plan. Or, I'm sorry, is
On
it
the
5 or
update,
6?
update body. Update.
5 o'clock,
Great.
a week from today.
Okay,
I'll be here about 5:05.
may I please have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I make the mo.
I'll say.
Whichever.
I'll second.
Okay.
All right,
I'll get the
this
minutes.
meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all.